From Advance to Atchison County, welcome to a very snowy state capital here on This Week in Missouri Politics. We are joined by a senator who is at the center of most all the Senate debate this week, Senator Cierpiot from Jackson County. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me.
You have, I guess you lost a bet or something, and you have dove into what is the most complicated part of Missouri public policy, utility rate making. You have a bill, a very comprehensive bill that would update and modernize the Public Service Commission, which oversees the utility companies. Tell me the high points of what's in it, but you're going to have to go slow because this is very complicated.
It is. Understanding utility regulation really takes a lot of time and work. And why I did it, I'm not sure. I question my judgment sometimes. But we really need to redo some things in Missouri. Tuesday, MISO, which MISO is the whole grid is broke into nationally into some areas. MISO's one. It's got the eastern side of the state and several states. On my side of the state in Kansas City, we're what they call the Southwest Power Pool, and it's several states in that area. And they kind of move power around as it's needed. MISO on Tuesday put out an alert that they were getting close to the maximum outputs. And I understand the SPP might be doing that today. We're not having problems yet, and people don't need to worry about this, but policymakers should. And this should be the type of thing that makes policymakers say, we need to look at this seriously and make some changes. And what the primary parts of the bill.
Well, I guess the problem I've ascertained is both sides of this discussion agree. We have to generate more power. The state of Missouri has requirements that are only going up year after year of more power.
That's true. It's very true. And the question is, because the EPA and some other things, and I go to a lot of meetings with chambers and Republican groups, and people are upset that the EPA is shutting down all these coal plants. They have been doing that for a decade. And this is an answer to some of that because the wind and solar are great sources on windy and sunny days, but that's not always true. And so we've got to have the ability to generate power when it's needed. It's called dispatchable. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to allow the utilities to recover their cost a little quicker when they deploy what they use now is gas. That's the most reliable form of energy generation. We have a large supply of gas for a long time, and they're trying to put in these gas turbines, and this allows them to recover their costs just a little bit faster. There's amazing, I think, protections for the consumer side of things. The PSC has got control on everything we're doing, and I think the oversight is strong enough. The consumer groups, for the most part, have come in, and they're supportive of some of this, in fact, most of it, because they've been at the table putting in some of these protections and clawbacks.
Well, I think both sides agree. You know, you could disagree on how you should go about it. We're going to have to produce more power in this state. I think every state is, but Missouri for sure.
I talked to economic development folks, and 10 years ago, a business wanting to come to Missouri, their average ask was for 3 megawatts. That's not a lot. Now the average request is 10 to 15 times that. We've had a couple of data centers look at us that are at 300 and 400 megawatts. Claycomo Ford is around 50. So, I mean, that is an enormous power load. And we've got to do that without burdening our families and all the other constituents. And there's a way to do that, to build this out and to accommodate this growth and to make it so Missouri's power is much more reliable.
Take the issue out of it. You, Senator McCreary, two people that have earned reputation of being pretty reasonable negotiators. But I really felt like the two of you, while you were working on this, maybe you come to a compromise at some point. But it felt to me like Senator O'Loughlin really stepped in and kind of took over this situation and helped you guys find a place to come together.
Tracy's been a good partner in this because her views on this are a lot different. She's got a heart for consumers, and we've worked together on this. And Cindy, the pro tem, has been critical. I don't think we'd be anywhere near where we are today without Cindy. She got everybody. I thought we'd be doing this in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I was really happy we're doing it in the middle of the afternoon on Tuesday.
I think better quality of negotiation at 4 p.m. than at 2 a.m.
Absolutely, because I've been in those late night meetings and
you're tired and you're irritable, and it's impossible not to be.
It is, and it was a much better process this time.
All right, speaking of simple issues that everybody has consensus on, let's talk about abortion in the state of Missouri.
Okay.
I could always kind of tell if you're pro-life or pro-choice. If you're pro-life, you call abortion, just plain spoken. If you're pro-choice, you call it reproductive health care, all these other things. I think your constituents are probably more torn than most in this state. Amendment 3 barely passed. It does feel like, just almost like with Clean Missouri, you're going to have another bite at the apple. When the Supreme Court kicked this back to the states, it was going to be sloppy, and in Missouri we're sloppy. It feels like the folks aren't done giving their say on this issue.
I think you're right, and people are saying we're trying to overwhelm the will of the people. We're not. We're just going to let people make a decision again, because just like Clean Missouri, I believe that the language on the ballot was misleading. And most people don't take the time before the election to go read something. They read what they see in the ballot.
And you know what? They're busy.
Yeah.
They're paying a huge amount of tax. They're getting their kids to school. They're working a job. No one has time, but I agree with you. No one. I've never read the full ballot.
And so I think it was an overreach, just like I think our law was back in 19 that we passed, the
I
heartbeat
think the
bill.
folks are somewhere in the middle. And the law that you passed in 18, when Roe versus Wade was overturned, it went way past where the folks were. Now I think this Amendment 3 has taken things back further than the folks are. I think Missourians like watching a tennis match with this issue.
I think you're right. And I've always thought that if you look at Europe, Western Europe, the democracies over there didn't have Roe v. Wade overwhelming everything and the courts taking over the issue. They had to work things through. And most of them got so abortion is legal in the first month for many reasons, and then pretty much restricted after that. I think that's not necessarily where I am. I'm pro-life. But I think if democracy is left to work, once all this heat and light goes away, I think that's kind of where we'll probably settle.
Well, your family, your wife are the most recognized pro-life people in Jackson County from my perspective. If you have to choose between having some exceptions for rape, incest, maybe a few weeks to make a decision, or what we have now, probably the most pro-choice law on the planet.
Yes.
I think you have to, I mean, to me, if you're pro-life and those are your choices, you make a decision to come up with some compromise language that can pass, right?
Mm-hmm. I think that's very true. I think that's where, not necessarily where I am, but that's where I think folks are. I think if we ever get all of this animosity out of the way,
If you put the 2018 law on the ballot right now, I don't think it'd pass.
I don't think so either. And that's one of the things that agrees with me. When we did that, we should have put the rape and exception in there. MRL would not, Missouri Right to Life.
Talking about 3 points.
I know.
think those two provisions would have got you those 3 points.
Georgia law, it has it perfectly for rape and incest. With a criminal complaint, I think their law would have been perfect for Missouri. And I think Amendment 3 would have failed.
Let's talk about crime in St. Louis. I remember when you were running for state senate, one of your campaign commercials referenced the out-of-control crime rate in St. Louis. It appears as though the tide is certainly, the channel and the current are taking you for state control of the St. Louis Police Department. Why is that the right move?
Well, that's what we have in Kansas City,
Yeah.
Which is kind of my area. I think we're just trying. I know the governor wants to get more involved. I think that gives him some ability. I've listened to you say, and I'm not sure that in 3 years he'll look back and think, boy, I'm glad I took. We just took state control.
I think there's nothing in this for Mike Kehoe except he actually sees a problem and wants to solve it. I think people kick St. Louis in this state. The history of the state's politics is kicking St. Louis. I don't think Mike Kehoe comes to this to maliciously kick St. Louis.
I don't either.
There's nothing in this for him.
St. Louis is in Mike's heart. There's no doubt about
Yeah.
that. And he wants to do something to help. And I think it's worth a try. We've tried it before. We give it back. It hasn't worked. The prosecutor change helped tremendously, I think, in St. Louis.
Let me ask you this though: did it help? Because my whole life, I had an aunt and uncle that lived in Independence. I thought of Kansas City as a safe place. I would walk around downtown. If Casey was walking around downtown, I'd think nothing of it. If she told me she was walking around downtown St. Louis, whatever the stats are, I would feel like it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Is there something the state can do to actually make your average Missourian feel like St. Louis is safe? I really wonder if that's true. If you could.
Well, those thoughts and feelings are over many, many years are developed.
Decades.
And it takes many, many years to unwind that if we can get the problem under control. But I just know that the police, with the new prosecutor, I think they're much more encouraged. They feel like they're supported.
Is there anything you could do for the economic growth of this state that would be bigger than fixing crime in St. Louis?
No, there's not. And St. Louis is the biggest. Every time I see the numbers out of St. Louis, Kansas City is a fine, thriving town.
And growing.
It is growing. But St. Louis is much bigger and much more important to the state.
All right, let's talk about the state's revenue. You've cut taxes, and you've cut taxes, all that everybody loved, and it was great. But it feels like the next cut, it's not just going to be something you could paper over or borrow or put a little here and there and measure it out. Mm-hmm. You're probably to the point where you start cutting, right?
It is. There's that talk's going on again, and as a Republican, I love low taxes, but as a Republican, I think fiscal sanity is also important. Ronald Reagan cut taxes in the 80s. I thought he thought he could starve the beast. Then they found they could spend money they don't have.
They could borrow it. Yeah.
And it's never happened. Cutting taxes is easy. Raising spending is easy. raising taxes or cutting spending are difficult, and those are things we never do. And I think we should get spending down before we start cut taxes any further, because we still got pending cuts coming on income tax. And people talk about getting rid of the income tax completely. I love to do that.
Sure.
But they compare it to states that really have other sources of revenue. Tennessee, their state sales tax is 7%. Ours is 4.225. And they tax food at 4%. We tax food at 1.225. That's an enormous number. And they talk about Florida. Florida's got all these people like my wife and I who go down there and spend money on sales tax.
Taxes as oil.
And also Florida makes $1 billion a year off toll roads. We don't have any toll roads.
Well, I think what we found is Kansas, if you cut without tourism or oil, and you cut without increasing your sales tax or property tax, you're just going to end up raising taxes again. It's going to be a big bloody mess.
And they can do that. We can't. If we cut because of Hancock, it's going to go back on the ballot, and it may not get raised again. So we've got to be very careful.
I do think you reach the point where caution is going to be important. I do think you've made the easy cuts. The next thing someone's going to start noticing, or it's a tough thing as a policymaker. If you spend $10 million of state dollars to get $150 million of federal dollars, I think that's a good investment. Talk about ROI, that almost always comes back to the state. I think you are into some tricky territory.
And I keep hearing my team mostly talk about how much Missouri budget has grown in the last 10 years, and it has, but our taxes haven't gone up. And so that money mostly is from the federal government and from just generic growth.
If I were you, I would just keep cutting taxes and leave it to your successor. I mean, you've only got 2 more budgets. I'd say it's their problem.
It's troubling, though. I mean, we just need to be careful, because with Hancock, Missouri is different than a lot of states. If we make a mistake, it is not necessarily guaranteed we're going to unwind it. So I think we need to be very careful.
So I've been drinking this hot chocolate with the Honda Booth holder from Coffee Zone for several years now. Most of those years, I've watched the state Senate fight, bicker. It's generally just a miserable place to be. It feels like things are a little different this year.
Mm-hmm. I think the pro tem and floor leaders, Cindy and Tony, are doing a good job of keeping people involved. I've talked to a lot of people that we've had the splits with before, and people are talking back and forth. I think things this year are more based on policy, which is how the place is supposed to work, and not personality, and that's very helpful.
She's also come out against the state's court plan, the nonpartisan court plan. I have to say, I shudder to think, we talk about St. Louis and Kim Gardner and these things. Can you imagine what the judges in St. Louis would be like if they elected them?
I know. That's just like
Kansas City.
The one in Kansas City that just did this ruling on abortion. If we had elected judges, she'd be far to the left of where she is. I agree with Cindy on many things. I don't agree with Cindy on the court plan. I think the court plan is something that's working very well. People complain that it tacked to the left, and it did, because for 20 of 24 years we had a Democratic governor. But now we're going to soon have a Republican governor for 12 years with Mike when Governor Kehoe gets through his first term. And it's starting to tack back to the right. That's how the system is supposed to work. And if you don't want the court to get the way it was leaning 5-10 years ago, you have to elect a Republican governor once in a while.
And I think we're on trend to do that for a while.
We did. I mean, we had Carnahan for 8, and then we had Holden for 4. Then we had a break with Butt, and he put Judge Zell Fisher on the board on thing. And then we had Nixon for 8 years. And so that's how this gets to where it is. But now we're going to have, for the foreseeable future, and Governor Parsons had a tremendous impact on the Supreme Court. Yeah. And I think Governor Kehoe is going to have several judges coming up. With Trump winning and the Eastern District Federal Court having some vacancies, I think there'll be some other openings coming up pretty quickly.
Senator Boyd, thank you so much for the time.
I appreciate you, Scott.
We'll be right back with a This Week in Missouri Politics debut, one of the most anticipated debuts in the show's history. Bennie Cook joins us after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople, while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
You know, Missouri farmers have been doing what's best for their land for generations. After all, no one knows what it takes to feed and fuel a growing global population better than they do. So why are trial lawyers threatening Missouri farmers' best defense against weeds? Our farmers don't need to be controlled. They need to be supported. Keep glyphosate in our state. Show your support at TakeControlMissouri.com. Paid for by Modern Ag Alliance in support of Missouri farmers.
Missouri's childcare crisis is hurting our children, families, and even our economy. Currently, 78 Missouri counties are designated as childcare deserts, where the number of kids needing childcare exceeds the number of available options. Today, some Missouri families are spending more on childcare than housing, and Missouri's childcare shortage costs our economy $1.35 billion every year. Missouri families and businesses deserve better. Learn more at mochampionofchildren.com.
Some politicians claim cockfighting is a proud tradition, but is it really something to be proud of? Cockfighting isn't just cruel to animals, it's cruel to humans. It's linked to organized criminal activity, illegal gambling, even drug trafficking. Leading law enforcement and Christian groups have spoken out and are urging a stop to the violence. But some politicians want to give cockfighters a pass. Keep cockfighting out of our state.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren, Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics Opinion Maker Panel Time. Kyerra Johnson, welcome back to the show. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott, for having me today.
Marlene Terry, one of my absolute favorite guests. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much.
Tara Peters from Rolla, Phelps County.
Nice to see you again.
And for the first time on the show, person we've invited many times, we finally, well, Tara finally got him to say yes.
You're welcome.
Representative Bennie Cook, thank you so much for making the time.
It's great to be here first time. So
Love it. Representative Peters, let's just start off. Piece of legislation moving through the House this week affects something called glyphosate. Most folks know it as Roundup. The interesting thing is it probably touches 75-80% of the food that we eat. It is an indispensable part of Missouri agriculture, but right now it feels like they're being sued out of existence.
They are. So as an agritourism destination owner, we use the product. And so I think it's an important piece of legislation that needs to move forward in order to protect our food and our farmers.
Well, at some point, you can't just allow a product to be sued out of existence. If a product this important, Representative Cook, I was so funny. I went to the Senate hearing on this, and I watched some dude in a man bun sit there and try to tell Curtis Gregory how to farm. And basically said, have you ever mixed Roundup? He goes, yeah, I have. And this guy's telling him how he should do it. I'm like, okay, this is why the city people should stay in the city and just thank us for dinner.
we have to listen to our agriculture leaders. Curtis Gregory, Dane Deal, they are our agriculture leaders, some of them, and we have to listen to them.
It is funny, though. The city people always want to tell you how to make dinner. Instead of just thanking you and moving on, they always want to tell you what to do. Kyerra, it is going to be interesting, though. I don't know if you could pass a tort reform bill because, frankly, trial lawyers have switched over and backing Republicans now. And they may have built a firewall that says you can't pass this legislation.
Well, I think in that case, then we would have to really look at the details as to why we can't pass that legislation.
But can't pass legislation because they fund a lot of the senators that are going to oppose it.
Well, I don't know if that's questionable or not, but I think that we might need to consider some of the ideas.
At some point, though, can you, if Roundup is removed from the market and your farmers are totally reliant on these Chinese kind of knockoff products, I mean, there's a national security issue there, but it's also that stuff is cheap and it doesn't really work as well. I mean, imagine a farm without Roundup. Frankly, it would be like imagining St. Louis without water.
I don't know that the issue is just mainly about farmers as much as it is about Monsanto itself. So when you come from an underserved community and you think about the amount of kids that have asthma or all of the different things of toxic waste and things like that affect those communities, it becomes a bigger issue outside of just pesticides, but where they're building these places and these factories that affect those communities specifically.
I bet you there's got to be 20, 30 minimum people that work for Monsanto live in your district. It is a major employer. Bear bought it, obviously, but still, end of the day, I mean, every farm in this country that produces significant amounts of food is made to run on Roundup.
Well, my sister was employed at Monsanto. She retired from Monsanto, great company. I use Roundup in my herbs, but she made a great point here. As far as the pesticides and whatever. But I am listening to the farmers. I'm listening to the farmers, the ones that really know, what it does for them, and that's where we get our product from, our food product. And so, I'm going to listen to them and follow their lead on this one, because that's not one of the things that's on my radar. And so I'm going to listen to their expertise.
Terry, is it going to take Bayer pulling Roundup off the shelves, and not really its shelves? I don't think that matters. Is it going to take Roundup stop selling it to farmers, or if you'll take this seriously?
No, and I think we've already got legislation being proposed that we're going to ban it for us from being able to purchase it in China too. So, no, it's a product that needs to stay.
Suburban Republicans are against China until they can stick it to rural Republicans, then they're fine with it.
Right.
Give me a prediction, Benny Cook. Does this bill pass and go to the governor for signature?
This passes.
What do you think? What do you think, Representative Peters?
I think it's going to be really close, but I think it's going to squeak through.
Pass the House. Uphill bound in the Senate. What do you think? Pass the House?
I think it will.
What do you think?
Farmers Feed America, I think it might pass.
Does it pass the Senate, though?
We'll wait on it.
A lot more of that money has been sent to the Senate than the House. It would be very, very, and it very well may be. Speaking of an issue that kind of was up to Kyerra's office this week was utilities. Her office is very involved in the utility debate. Benny, at the end of the day, I think whether you're on the consumer side of this, utility side, the business side, the one fact is you have to produce more power in this state. This state requires more power than it's producing. And that's going to only be true more and more and more as time goes by. You have companies that cannot expand because every major corporation has a data center. You can't really put a data center in very many parts of this state right now with the current amount of electricity output.
We've got to do better, and that's going to be great discussions to have in the future here.
Well, they had a lengthy discussion about it in the Senate this week. Representative, at some point, I think reasonable people could argue how you go about producing more power. But I don't think anybody can argue that even today, but much more so as time goes forward, you have to produce more power in this state.
We do. Utilities keep us warm, right? I'm not an expert on anything with utilities. We had 340B prescription drugs discussed this week. That made my brain hurt enough. I'll let the Senate decide on the utilities this week.
It was a lengthy discussion, talked a lot about process and how the bill came to be. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure anybody can credibly say that you're not going to have to produce more power to feed the needs of Missouri.
I don't think, as much as I believe that the issue is about power, right? I also believe that we have a couple things in that bill, which is future test year and a focus on PISA. And when we look at future test year, we have to think about how much it's going to affect the consumers, right?
That's kind of a gas and water thing.
Well, it is a gas and water thing, but I think that when you look at the two bills that we're focused on, which is Senate Bill 4 and Senate Bill 6, they create pathways for each other through the discounts that they're giving to large corporations. And I think that that is actually the bigger issue that we're talking about, and really not talking about an issue as to making sure that we have enough power. I'm not being funny, but this is America. We're going to make sure it happens.
I do think she's probably right. I do think there's a way to make sure it happens. But if you don't actually build the power plant somehow, and if you don't make it where the utilities can afford to finance the power plants, you can't build them, right?
You're right. And I'm going to, again, listen to her because she seems to have done her research. And
far more than me, I have no
far
idea.
more than I myself. I went to the utilities committee person on my side with a bill about utilities, and it was absolutely shamed. So I'm like, Tara, I only know that it keeps you warm. It's very much needed. And so until I do my research, I don't feel that I'm one that can really speak on utilities.
Well, see, I've made a living off not doing any research and speaking anyway. So let's talk about, speaking of complicated issues, St. Louis crime. I actually watched the history of this state is politicians from other parts of the state gaining popularity by attacking St. Louis. I honestly feel, maybe this is the naivete in me, there's nothing in this for Mike Kehoe, except I think he actually wants to solve this problem. This is politically, there's no upside for him, which makes me think I think he actually cares about solving this.
We have a great governor. I'm so excited to have Governor Kehoe in that position. And today's going to be a great day in the House. We're going to pass the St. Louis, this bill we're going to try to do our best to take care of crime in St. Louis with this piece of legislation. Brad, Chris are going to do a great job third reading it today. It's going to get to the Senate. I'm optimistic the Senate will take care of it. Send it to the governor's desk. Governor Kehoe's going to sign that.
Yeah, I think he signs that like right away.
Right away.
I don't think there's any grass goes to be there.
Yeah.
But Representative Peters, when you talk about this problem, You're from Rolla. I have always felt like Kansas City was safe and St. Louis wasn't. Now, there's stats. I don't know any of that stuff. Just my own feeling. Can you convince people in Rolla that St. Louis is safe? Even if you take the city, he'll do all the things Kyerra wants to do. What he's trying to do, is it possible to do?
I think it's possible, absolutely, with this legislation getting through. Hopefully we'll see some decrease in numbers, and it'll be an improvement for the city.
What do you think?
Well, I have did some research. Love it. I did some research on this one. And, for 100+ years, the state did have control over the St. Louis City Police. And there was really no improvement. And so I'm thinking now.
That's accurate.
I'm thinking now, as we go along, the citizens that live in St. Louis, they want to keep control of their police department. I work on behalf of the citizens, and so I am listening to them, and I support what the citizens want and need. I live in St. Louis County, which is right next door. It makes no difference, and I do feel safe. If I didn't feel safe, I would have packed my bags and moved a long time ago. I feel safe. I feel that the crime is across the board. Kansas City, and they have control of Kansas City.
I think the stats bear out what you're saying. I'm not sure the perception of people in this state bears out to the facts.
Yeah, the perception, you may be right, but I think the perception is what people want the perception to be. You can make your mouth say anything, doesn't necessarily make it true. And that's how I feel.
What do you think? I mean, I think this issue does feel like it's going to pass the House. Governor Kyerra clearly is going to sign this. It comes down to a coalition of Senator Washington, Senator May, and maybe Senator Mosley about whether this bill actually makes it out of the Missouri State Senate.
Honestly, I think that what Governor Kehoe is trying to do is a great initiative, right? But I think that you have to look at the key players outside of rural Missouri, right? And you have to let St. Louis City decide what's best for St. Louis City. So when this comes to the Senate, and hopefully they debate this on the floor to the extent where they look at that the crime bill just doesn't talk about St. Louis City and the police takeover as much as it talks about, it redefines crime, right? So when we talk about things like rioting, or we talk about protesting, or how those things play out, where we're redefining and operationalizing things, we have to make sure that we can take a steady approach at that legislation to make sure that everybody at the table can understand what's going on and the best part of implementation.
With a minute left, who won the week?
I'm going to say State Senator Angela Walton Mosley won the week. She held the floor.
Held the floor for a long time.
She sure did.
How about an Angela Mosley, Mike Myrtle line? Never thought I'd see that. Who won the week?
I'm going to go with Cindy O'Loughlin.
You picked my pot.
I did.
I knew you was going to do that.
That's my girl.
Who won the week?
I'm going to pick Representative John Fukin and Representative Bennie Cook. There was a 340B legislation for, as a pharmacist, he did a really great job in hearing this week on that bill, so.
Who won the week?
Brad Christ is going to win the week. We're going to pass this bill today for public safety for St. Louis.
I'm not going to say you're all wrong. Since you stole mine, I'm going to go Bruce DeGroat, who wins every week. And I'm going to say Tracy McCreary. It is very easy to say you won the week when you pass a bill, but when you're the person that has to negotiate that thing down, and she got a ton of consumer protections, I would say between the coalition, talk about odd coalitions, Bruce DeGroat, Tracy McCreary won the week. Well, you'll win the week next week by joining us here on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, the United Electric Cooperative, and the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts.